So our first question was, which of the following areas have you or your client's business been impacted the most? Looks like sales and people have come off as the top items, with supply chain in there as well. Not surprising. The second question was, how do you see you or your client's sourcing strategies changing? And really the opinion now is some change with critical components sourced only in the USA. Although there were a few who said major sourcing also. And finally, so the question everyone's been waiting to answer is, when do you expect you or your client's business to return to at least Feb 2020 levels? And 12 to 24 months seems to be the most, although several also feel 12 months from now. So I would call us an optimistic group here. So excellent. All right. So let's move on. Let's move on to the fun part, which is I will now introduce our panel. To start, I'll introduce Bud Tyler. Bud is a strategic manufacturing professional with 43 years experience, including 15 years with a small division of Johnson & Johnson, where he started as a machinist and worked up to director of materials. He has devoted the last 26 plus years as the vice president of the EF Precision Group, a consultative manufacturing company that provides CNC machining, complete build assembly, and engineering services. They focus on serving aerospace, medical, semiconductor, and the commercial industries. Bud, thank you for being on the panel.
Good afternoon, AJ. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Next, we have Bill Morrow. Bill is a managing partner at ECS, where he oversees the sales and marketing group, which provides guidance and execution to both small and mid-sized companies. Prior to joining ECS, Bill ran sales and marketing teams for Regus, Rentokil, and Lakeshore Learning. Bill, thanks for being on the panel.
Thanks, AJ. Glad to be here.
Next, for our operations expert is Newell. Newell Everett works with small to mid-sized industrial operations to drive sustainable operating performance improvements. He does this while formulating strategy and leading or supporting tactical initiatives. Newell, welcome to the panel.
Thanks, AJ. Glad to be here.
And we do have a well-rounded panel. Rob Hoyle. Rob is the CEO and founder of GTS Scientific, an executive search firm based in Philadelphia. GTS Scientific provides talent acquisition services to life sciences, engineering, specialty chemical, food and beverage, and technology industries, with over 150 clients through the US, UK, Canada, and India. Rob is a subject matter expert in creating, implementing, and optimizing talent acquisition processes and leading and developing high-performance recruiting teams. Rob, welcome to the panel.
Thanks for having me, AJ. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank all our panelists for coming on and what will be an excellent discussion. So let's kick this off. And my first question is for Bud. Bud, what is your outlook in the next 3 months, 6 months, and the year? Where do you see your business going?
Well, I think business in general is going to be distinctly different for every company that's working, especially in the manufacturing side. So for our business, we're tight into the medical field right now. We're doing some life-sustaining stuff. So our 3, 6, and 1 is very exciting. It looks like it's going to be some banner months, and we could actually have probably one of our best years since the late 90s. I think for business in general, I think it's going to be whatever's happening right now, people are trying to adjust to either the heights or the lows and see how they can make the things come back quicker. So I think everybody's going to be challenged in how they bring their people back if there's people away. I think there's going to be a challenge as the economy goes, how they treat their customers, and maybe revamping their business to find those niches again that made them successful.
That's excellent. So Bill Morrow, you work across a variety of different sectors, right? And do you see that optimism across the board, or do you see that in some industries?
Yeah, I think you see it in some industries and others. There's a lot of fear and some concern, but I think Bud brings up a good point. There are companies out there that are making great strides right now, and they've adapted quickly and well and are seeing records. We have, in fact, we seem to be having, in the manufacturing world, we seem to be having more companies that are doing really well than really suffering or doing poorly. Now, I know that's not for everyone, but if they're adapting, it's great. If you're not adapting, it can be a problem.
Rob, from a recruiting perspective, you get a very good bird's eye view on the market. And what are you seeing 3 months, 6 months, 1 year?
Yeah, so for us, luckily, a lot of our work is in life sciences, and that industry has been booming throughout this whole thing. Now, the medical device, as Bud mentioned, they're busy doing some of these essential devices, but that kind of slowed down a little bit due to elective surgeries and things like that not happening in the hospital. Now, in the next 60 days, as states and jurisdictions open up, I think that will start to pick up pretty quickly here because we're going to have a line out the door, I think, for some of those elective surgeries. Then I think it'll take a little bit longer for some of the traditional manufacturing to come back, 90 days or a little longer for that. That's still going to be a little bit slow until consumer demand picks up, throughout the country here. But as we open up, I think it will, bounce back fairly quickly.
Excellent. All right, let me ask Newell a question. And Newell works a lot with, from the operations side, works with small to medium-sized manufacturers. I want to hear a little bit more about the pain points, the challenges they're facing, and what are some examples of ways that they're addressing those challenges today?
Well, one real big one, if you get out on the shop floor, is process redesign. The folks that are operating at this point some of them have had to really upend their operations in order to get distancing, and that has presented a bit of a challenge. Costs go up, lead times go up. Another one is availability of resources. A number of folks have had trouble bringing people back from unemployment. And I think one real big one that has confused a lot of people is a little bit of a shifting regulatory environment. You're not really always sure what to latch on to as the way to do things. In terms of solving those, I think one of the real big ones that people have had success with is engaging with employees. When you got folks involved, you got a lot of new ideas, and you also get a lot of goodwill by doing that. And I think people have to kind of be a little bit flexible on the resource side, whether it's with former employees or potentially new hires, if you're fortunate enough to be in one of the industries that's booming right now. And it's critical to keep monitoring all the different agencies to find out about evolving guidelines and changing regulations. And finally, I think it's a good idea to kind of stay involved, keep an eye on competitors and best practices at other businesses. Things like this seminar, I think, are a real good idea for a lot of people to get those ideas.
Yeah, just to kind of go back to what you're saying about the regulations, what kind of regulations are we talking about, and how long do you see them lasting?
Well, I think some of them are probably going to go on for quite a while. In terms of actual regulations, you have a bit of a confusing environment because different states have tried to do different things from a regulatory perspective. There have been some municipalities that have tried to do things. OSHA hasn't really done any regulatory changes. They've come out with guidelines. And that has changed once or twice over the last 3 months. So it's just a case of trying to stay up minute by minute. I know here in Pennsylvania, for example, we have a little bit of a controversy, particularly in Lancaster County where I live, because we're in a category red according to the state, but according to the county, we're in category yellow. So that tends to be kind of confusing from a business perspective. What are we supposed to be doing here?
All right. Lack of clarity, I guess that's a big one.
We have a question that relates, if you'd like.
Sure.
So from the audience, is the disruption of the supply chain, do you think that's an opportunity for you as manufacturers by filling gaps in other supply chains? So Newell, do you see those gaps being filled?
I think there's a lot of opportunities. I agree with the question. I think there's a lot of businesses that are shutting down, whether temporarily or in some cases permanently, and that is going to leave an awful lot of gaps. So if it's something adjacent to a product you're manufacturing, you might want to think about jumping into that market or that particular product space. But I'm not the supply chain expert necessarily, so.
No, that's great. Let me just turn over to Bill, because I think there was this overwhelmingly, the poll suggested that there's an issue in the sales area. And I wanted to have you think a little bit about that. What do you think is going on, Bill? Why is sales suffering so much? And what are some opportunities there?
Yeah, historically, the manufacturing world is a face-to-face, person-to-person, relationship-driven business. You guys know better than I do even that you create long-lasting relationships, and there's a lot of trust, especially in this area, about who you do business with, and that's been disrupted tremendously. Upwards of 70% of all lead flow came from face-to-face interactions, either with user groups or events or just face-to-face sales meetings. And when you can't do any of those three, and 70% of your lead flow and interaction with your customer base dries up, you have to pivot, adapt, and learn how to react in this world. And we've been seeing an influx on the marketing and the sales side of customers coming to us asking, how do we communicate to our customer base? What do we do? And we've been teaching a lot of people about new ways of communicating, like webinars. Like we're all spending more time on webinars than we ever have. But there's a lot of tools and ways to still communicate to customers. And again, if you can adapt to that, customers are buying. There's Newell mentioned, there's lots of people out there, and Bud as well. Bud's busy. Bud's buying material. Bud's buying stuff. He's hiring people. If you can connect to Bud and some of those others, they'll buy your services and goods.
Yeah. But you agree with that? You see that there's still an opportunity for salespeople there to go through online means.
I find it a challenge myself. I've attended more Zoom meetings and more getting acquainted again with people that just having the technology that's going to lead the way. We were just talking about it today. 99% of our businesses come from network relationships. I'm used to seeing, handshaking, talking to people on a regular basis and going out for coffees, 3-4 times a week. And I see a dramatic change. And yet the people that I normally see regularly, now we're talking more frequently on the phone or seeing each other through Zoom. And quite frankly, it's allowing us to get more done because now we're not traveling to each other's location. We're kind of being able to get a directed conversation. It doesn't last as long as maybe an hour-long coffee and a 15-20 minute drive one way or the other. So more productivity from my customer standpoint, or I think from customer standpoint in general. Right now, it's going to be a very slow recovery of seeing people and going to each other's facilities. And that's a big part of our business. So we started adapting, and I think more and more people that I'm talking to are adapting their websites. So now their website's going to have more virtual visits, if you will. I think the challenge is going to be correcting the websites and making sure they're a lot more productive than they used to be.
Right. Yeah. And manufacturing has been an industry that hasn't moved as fast as some of the others, especially when it came to that. But that's very good to hear. I wanted to see Newell on that same kind of way of thinking. Where do you see the kind of new opportunities of working within your client base?
Yeah, well, lots of manufacturing companies are having everybody work from home. Oh, no, wait, that's right. They can't do that for the most part. Sorry, forget that one. It's really just the steps that people are taking to provide distancing and improve health and safety of the workers. That's pretty much the focus of the folks that I've worked with anyway.
Yeah.
We have an audience question on this that says, back to the last, are there any other tips for getting those potential customers to know you and like you and trust you, right? Because that's what you did when you were face-to-face, Bill. So what are the tips, the web versus those in-person? Any other tips to get that relationship?
Yeah, we use all kinds of things. Bud, I think Bud and Newell both mentioned website is critical. Our clients, if you're trying to get out there, add value. Everything you do should add value to what you're doing for your customer. I know Bud is a busy guy. He needs somebody to come through the door and add value. You've got to add value, and you got to add it for customers. So one of our customers now is doing behind the scenes webinars, but they're really classes to teach their audience how to use their online tools that they've already built but weren't using in order to buy their goods and materials. So they spent their first webinar they kicked out, and which was teaching people how to use their tool to order their goods, increased sales by $300,000 in 24 hours.
Wow.
It was just that easy, that fast. There's ways to video is hot right now. Video has increased fourfold in the last 2 months. And if you haven't used a tool called BombBomb, if you're a salesperson, horrible name, but that's what it's called. BombBomb, B-O-M-B. You can take short little snippets of videos of yourself and send them off to people to try to start that connection and start to get going. Because you want to make a person face-to-face connection and show you're a genuine person and you're adding value along the way. Lots of tricks, though.
Yeah, no, that's a great segue into kind of my next question for you, Bill. When you think about these new ways of working, and I think manufacturers get flooded with a lot of salespeople selling sales solutions. And from looking out a little further out, what do you think is going to put them in the best position for kind of that longer term growth? What should they be investing in today?
Yeah, you need to be investing in the relationship. I've talked to a lot of business owners and salespeople that say, well, my people aren't buying today. Well, you have a sales cycle that's 6 months to a year. Just because they can't buy today doesn't mean you can't build relationships. One of my clients has made an effort for the first time to cold call. I know everyone says, oh, cold calling's dead. I got to tell you, it's not dead, and it's not dead right now. Make those investments, call those people, because the gatekeepers are gone. There's people out there that are having conversations. Don't call them and waste their time, because you'll never get them on the phone again. Be ready with something. Be ready to add some value. Offer something up that maybe you guys are doing that's a little different. And you're going to get through to business owners and CEOs as long as you are making the calls. You can't get a call for every time you pick up the phone and get somebody. But we've seen double and triple the number of decision makers picking up the phones and having good conversations that don't result in sales today. But like you said, AJ, 6 months, a year from now, you're going to drive some business.
Yeah, absolutely. And they also have the time to invest in that today as well. So
I have one client that calls on attorneys. I know this is business services, legal services. You can never get an attorney on the phone to have a discussion. The sales guy I've got calling on attorneys right now gets through about once every 4 phone calls. He gets through to a partner in a law firm. That's unheard of, because they're available. Now, someone like Bud, who's swamped, might be a little harder, but unless Bud's got lots of free time and I don't know about it, but I'm going to say no.
All right, let me switch gears to the human aspect of things, specifically around talent. And Rob, this is what Rob does for a living. And I wanted to ask you, Rob, do you see any silver linings here? I know it's been tough. Maybe Bud knows this, but I'm sure it is, how hard it has been to recruit machinists before. And do you see some opportunities there given the talent pool that's out?
Yeah, so there are some silver linings. One of the things that we always talk about our clients when it comes to hiring is having a swift, fast, and efficient hiring process. And what we found now is that our clients are going to, and I don't know about machinists, but about interviewing them on site versus Zoom, but all of our clients virtually overnight went to Zoom interviewing everybody. And the other thing that happened was the executives that are interviewing our candidates aren't able to travel right now. So they're able to interview people and get them scheduled very quickly. They're able to offer these jobs out to qualified candidates very quickly within a few weeks. And then they're able to start with a new company. So I think that the companies that are able to hire right now are seeing this as a time where, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, it was so hard to hire top talent. And now this may be an opportunity for them to hire from a company that's a smaller business that's hurting from this, or take advantage of the fact that their executives aren't traveling and they can hire people quicker. So that's the biggest thing that we see is the streamlined hiring process and having people interviewed very quickly. And it's funny to me because I've been talking to clients about it for 5 or 6 years now till I'm blue in the face. And when it was my idea, it wasn't a great idea, but now here we are and they're able to hire people quickly. So that really is a silver lining.
Right. No, and just so, what areas do you see it's taking them the longest to get the right talent? Where do you see the difficulties and where do you see it easier?
Well, for us, we're very specialized in life sciences, a big portion of our business. So for us, it's still a lot of those higher skill sets, like cell and gene therapy is the hot button item for us right now, especially here in the Philadelphia region. So those skill sets are still extremely sought after. And I know, for companies like Bud, machinists are still extremely hard to find, especially skilled machinists. So really at every level, when you talk about manufacturing, even though there's going to be some companies that are hurting, I think that, as we come back, the war for talent will be back in full force very quickly here. So we'll have to see where it goes. But again, if the hiring process is streamlined and efficient, you're going to have a better shot than the people who haven't caught up yet.
Actually, this is a good question to take now. Ben has a question here. Ben Pastro, do you expect a shift to greater use of contingent workforce as opposed to employees?
Yeah, that's a great question. In 2008, 2009, the staffing and contingent workforce, temporary employees expanded versus the full-time employees. We'll have to see. It'll probably happen. It depends on the level, right? So at the manufacturing level, absolutely that will happen. And as training develops for some of the folks that were working in other industries and they come into more demand type manufacturing, training will happen and that'll be necessary. But for some of the other skill sets, it won't.
Right. Good point. Okay, let's move over to the business end of things here, and so maybe I'll start off with Bud. And how has your business dealt with all this uncertainty? I mean, where do you start with planning for the future, knowing that things change every day? There's something new on the news. What's been your approach?
For us, it's people first. So the true assets of the company, recognize what the true assets are. Making sure that they're comfortable. Somebody raises the flag, don't ignore it. If they don't feel comfortable, find out why. I really think it's all about the employees. If they're not comfortable, you're not going to get a good day's work, and it could exacerbate throughout the organization. With us, we've just been keeping our ears low to the ground, making sure that they have all the PPE available, making sure that the climate is good. We've been disinfecting, calling outside companies in to make sure that we have our different areas and systems clean. It's been a good process for us because generally I think this is the way that we're going to be. I don't see us changing now. I see us, we've always been a clean organization, but we're better. This has literally made us better. It's a cleaner environment. I don't necessarily like everybody wearing masks, and I know everybody doesn't like wearing masks. But what we've done with that is we've gone out to outside people that were in the neighborhood that were making masks. We bought masks from them. We've also had some masks made that had our logo on the side. So we're trying to keep it the family environment. Hiring people is going to be a challenge because now they're making more money at home than they were at work. That's a problem. Machinists are very difficult to find still. But you know, I see a lot of this as opportunity. This is a way to make your companies better, and this is a warning shot that has gone over everybody's bow. If you didn't pay attention, it's going to come back and haunt you. It's just going to be a real problem.
Right. Just to follow up on that, are there any major decisions that you're holding off on until things become more clear, or how's the pace changed?
Our pace has gotten more rapid, and I think that's good. Because we've been busy. Everybody has been just focused. So we're focused forward. It's not been a major change for us. We've always worked, but now it's at a different pace, and our pace has quickened. Whereas a lot of companies that I've seen, their pace has slowed down, and they're trying to find ways to make sure that people are engaged. We really didn't have a choice. We've gone from we're now producing 10 to 15 times more product than we were 6 weeks ago.
Wow.
So it's been a true challenge for us, but it's been good for our organization.
Yeah.
So we have a question on that with the handling. How are you handling the change with the forecasting and the goal setting in that uncertain environment?
That could either be Bud or Bill could also talk a little bit about forecasting.
So you just,
I'll start.
Sure.
Our customers are shifting the forecast for us. It's the question comes, can you handle this? And if you don't answer yes, that they're going to start looking in other places. So we've been trying to stay on top of that, and our customers have been great. But we haven't skipped the beat yet, so I do keep it a consideration. We are trying to forecast for them, and we're actually buying ahead on some of it on what we've seen, because the customer may be a little bit late to react. So we're kind of doing some banking.
Yeah. Bill, your thoughts on forecasting, sales forecasting during this time?
Yeah, this will show weaknesses in a sales organization and a marketing organization, especially the sales side. If you don't have a good process and a good CRM or tools that manage this, and I know Bud does, we've chatted about it, you're going to struggle. It's going to be tough. But if you don't, I would hurry up and get that in place. Have an understanding what's going on. And I think it was Rob who mentioned how important communication is right now. You have to communicate and communicate with the sales team, and not salespeople have a tendency to over exaggerate or under exaggerate. And you need the straight skinny from them more now than ever, and have that communication on a regular basis, and then put it into your system and track it closely.
If I may, AJ, just
Sure.
to add one quick comment there from a manufacturing standpoint, I think it's absolutely critical that as we look at redesigning processes to separate folks or provide the appropriate protection, it's critical that we look at making things as flexible as possible, knowing that we can't accurately forecast tomorrow, next week, next month. And we need to be as flexible as possible on the manufacturing side, also the supply chain activity. We've got to make things as easy as possible to shift gears so we can deal with changing demand.
So Newell, can you give an example of what that looks like, say on the factory floor, what flexibility looks like? Is it more investment in smaller cells, or?
Well, there's actually a number of things you can do. As you're redesigning a process, which most people have had to do to some degree, you should give 5 minutes thought to how do we scale this back up? Because while you're redesigning it, that's a good time to give a little bit of thought to how do we scale it back up. Specific steps you can take, one that I'm a real big fan of, and I've seen a couple folks do very well, is put as much of your equipment and as many workstations as possible on wheels. Hang your utilities from the ceiling with soft drops, and for example, for electric, coil up extra cable in the ceiling and use a twist lock connector. When you need to move something, you undo the twist lock, move it, uncoil some of the cable, string it over here, you drop it again. You can be back in business in a different configuration within 15 or 20 minutes. Other examples, I think meeting with employees on a regular basis, you're going to get a lot more ideas for how do we make things flexible. But I'm a real big believer in making things portable. Additionally, as much cross training as you can afford to do, particularly in industries that aren't maxed out to capacity right now, it's a really good opportunity to get some cross training done for some of your critical skills. So as things do start to ramp back up, you're not short of the skill sets that you need.
All right. There was a question from the audience about, and this was, I guess, for everyone, has anyone had a positive test in their plant or their customer's plant? And if so, have you shut down for a period of time while disinfecting?
I can answer that. I've had 2 clients that have had positive test results and have shut down. Both of them have called in, have shut down for a very limited time, and have brought in outside cleaning services, as I believe Bud had mentioned earlier, to sanitize the entire facility, very focused specifically on the portion of the facility where the person who had the positive test result was. I know just from a sort of a best practices perspective, quite a few other businesses have reported doing similar things. Volkswagen, Coca-Cola, GE, and a lot of the really big organizations will shut down only a portion of the plant, but pretty much all of them have some degree of shutdown when there is a positive test result. The other one that most of them are real big on is notifying people who worked around this particular individual. Most of them, and in fact, I think it may be a legal issue, you can't disclose who it was, but you can talk to the folks who worked in that area. A couple of larger companies have taken it so far as to notify any suppliers as well who may have come into contact with that individual.
So these kind of, just on that same vein, do you see some of these practices to continue for the extended future? What's the general consensus? I mean, obviously, it's very expensive to do all the cleaning and the social distancing on a floor.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I think some of them are likely to continue, although maybe to a lesser degree. I would fully expect to see a little bit more, in many cases anyway, a little bit more employer involvement in monitoring the health and safety of employees a little bit better. We certainly moved a little bit on the issue of privacy versus group benefit at this point, and I'm not sure I see it snapping back completely. But I do expect once, and this is a broader question for folks, but once there are one or more good vaccines and better treatment protocols available to reduce the mortality rate, I would expect a lot of companies to start dialing back the more expensive activities they're undertaking.
But are you kind of seeing the same on your end also with your planning for this? You're mute, Bud.
Sorry. That's our plan. I don't see us backing off, but we went from a full building clean of $6,500 or $6,700 to now we're now disinfecting different areas. So we take different areas, mitigate some of the costs, and our entire crew has chipped in. So each shift, the guy cleans down their individual machines, tools, and their area prior to leaving. So the next guy comes in, he comes into a clean area and he works on that area, and then he does the same thing. So that was something that we had went outside for, and now we're doing it in-house, and it's, I think they even feel better about it because they know exactly what they're doing and they know the guy behind them.
Right. But just to press on that, is this something that you could see being done on an efficient basis moving forward?
I don't know that you would put it into efficiencies as much as you put it into the safety of the employees.
Of course, absolutely.
So, the efficiencies go out the window, and And again, you're talking about 15, 20 minutes at the end of every day.
Okay.
They probably wasted that before, and now it's being productive. So I see it as being productive, and also it's just better for everybody.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
We have a general question on how do you plan on maintaining and monitoring that employee health for all your employees? Are you currently screening your employees that come on site? I mean, Amazon has spent millions. They spend millions every shift change. They have the complete, right? So they're one end. On the other end of the spectrum, what do you see happening?
I think we need to be pragmatic. And we've done the temperatures, and I've done it roving, and not necessarily every time they walked in. If somebody wasn't feeling well, then we would monitor them more. I just think some of the common sense has to come back into play, and I think this has brought such an awareness on to in our industry. And if you get the stereotype that we always get driven to, dirty, dark, and dangerous, and we're so far away from that. But I think now we're starting to go on the other side. And I think that people are paying attention. I think the hygiene has just, I think it's off the charts, and I think it's great. And I don't see anybody complaining that they're staying clean, that they're washing their hands too much, that the machines are too clean, that the building looks nicer. So I think all the positive things that have come out of it, I think it's motivated them. I really do. I think we have a very good motivated crew, and the people I'm talking to, I think they're seeing the same results, although everybody's a little bit different. If the owners are very upset about this, then they go to the high levels like an Amazon because of the advertising or the things that can come out of it. But I think the medium-sized companies they're going to find their comfort zone again, but it'll be my opinion, and I know our company will be a lot better off for it.
Interesting.
Just kind of a comment on that. One of the best practices that I've read about extensively, particularly in Germany, is a lot of companies asking employees to take their temps at home, and then they must report and self-certify when they show up for work. One company in particular that I read about bought thermometers for everyone to make it easy to take their temp at home, and they also changed their sick leave policies to avoid penalties for calling in sick. And so they asked folks, take your temp at home, and if it's an issue, call in. Just as an aside on that, companies that do take temps of employees coming in the door, I've got one little story that illustrates how not to do it. One food company in the local area here started some time back taking the temperature of every employee as they entered the building. And they assigned a relatively low-level person to sit outside and do the temperature check on everybody. And I knew one of the people who went into the building, and he asked the guy checking temperatures, what was mine? And he said, well, you were 81 degrees. And it's like, well, that's a problem. And the guy goes, nope, I was told to turn away everybody with 100-degree temperature or higher. Well, it's a cold day. What are you seeing out here? Oh, everybody's in the 80s today. So, just be careful. Make sure you know how to use equipment when you do have stuff like that, because you could easily head down the wrong path with things.
Absolutely. We have sourcing questions, several of them, with the expectation of increased sourcing from the U.S. What are the U.S. regions that will benefit based on the labor availability and cost? And with that, how do you think the Mid-Atlantic region will take advantage of this opportunity?
Maybe we can have Bud take a shot at that.
So, look, we're a company that is primarily source U.S. material. We have our customers that kind of force us in different directions, and we are very active in trying to bring back anything that's done overseas. And while we were getting this crush, we found out that 2 products went end of life in a PC board, and literally had to go find all of the remnants that were sitting out all over the U.S. to try to get our base of it. And we got enough to last us for about 3 months. In the meantime, we had to re-engineer the entire PC board, and we're doing it all with U.S. equipment and U.S. material. it costs maybe, I don't know, 40% more, 35% more. And on this particular board, not necessarily significant, but enough. So our whole job on the engineering side is to keep everything US based as much as possible, use as much material that's in US. It happens. I mean, you know, but I think it's going to be a lot stronger US once this is over, because nobody wants to have things come over and be unsure of what you're getting or how long it needs to stay in a neutralized place.
Yeah, let me take a lead on that actually. Today, for those of you watching the news, a company named Flow, which was given something like $450 million by the US government. And this one's actually for Rob, because that is kind of his space. Rob, I wanted to get your thoughts on bringing back some of pharma manufacturing back in the US. Do you see this as a trend? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not seeing the trend yet. I'm hearing a lot about it, and I think it will actually be a real thing. And what's interesting is in the 80s and 90s, a lot of the manufacturing that we did for generic drugs and APIs and things like that all went over to China and India and those types of things. As it comes back, and I hope that it will, it's going to create thousands and thousands of jobs for folks here in the U.S. My thoughts are there's going to be a lot of challenges. Like I said, 3 months ago, hiring talent was a struggle, and it's going to continue to be, especially in pharma manufacturing. Some of the struggles, I don't know how. There's still a lot of facilities around where we can make these products, but it's a real opportunity for us to shift some of the folks that were maybe manufacturing older technology or coming from other industries. But we need to be able to figure out how to do training and development with these folks and get them up to speed on things like clean room manufacturing and even more of the more technical biologics and things like that require upstream and downstream training. But there's going to be a real opportunity there for us in the U.S. if we go that route. And I've even been hearing things about legislation being passed for us to do it. And obviously, it sounds like companies like Bud's, they're already doing it, and why wouldn't you, right? You've been impacted by this in the supply chain, and so big, you might as well look for better ways to do it. And if we can do it here, obviously that's a great thing for us.
Yeah. Justin, also going to manufacturing as a whole, returning to the U.S. and when manufacturing left the U.S., there were a lot more people, and now there's a lot more machines in manufacturing as a whole. So maybe I'll pose the question perhaps to Newell about on the automation side of things. If you do even see manufacturing coming back to the U.S., is it going to look different? What should manufacturers be investing in today to keep up?
Well, certainly over time, it does appear that the shift has begun to bring more manufacturing back into the U.S., and I think that's likely to continue. I know a couple of the clients that I work with have a lot of international suppliers, and they've been scrambling trying to figure out where in the U.S. they can source stuff. Unlike, where Bud maybe was already in a position where he was largely U.S. based, a lot of companies are not, and so. Yeah, there is a little bit of a shift going on there. In terms of, you're talking the opportunity side now. If you're in an industry and you see some opportunities to maybe jump into an adjacent industry or extend your product line to pick up some of that slack, that's going to be a case-by-case basis. Short term, I think what we're going to see is a lot of investment in material handling automation to avoid, worker exposure to each other. That also obviously long-term can cut costs if it's done properly. Another one I would see happening more and more is voice control of a lot of different manufacturing equipment to avoid having to put your hands on different controls and people on next shifts or adjacent people also having to put their hands on there. That minimizes cleaning. Maybe in the medium term, the other one that and maybe short term, but I could be wrong. Another one I see starting to develop a lot is more vision systems to monitor the distancing that's going on in your facility. Some of those are infrared, some of them are regular cameras. And the other one is wearables. For a good example is, I forget which company this is, but they are, it's Ford actually, sorry, experimenting with wristbands that will alert the wearer if he or she comes within 6 feet of another wristband. So I think a lot more automated equipment along those lines. And if you meant more automating the production process, AJ, certainly that's a long-term trend that's been underway for quite a while and has really contributed a lot to the increased productivity in U.S. manufacturing. So it takes fewer people to make more product. I don't think there's there may have been a temporary interruption in some of that migration after the 2008-2009 recession, but I've seen some of that capital spending start to come back, and I think people were already starting to head down that path again.
Well, it seems like there's a lot more automation happening at the larger companies where there's more scale. But as a trend, the smaller tier 2, tier 3 suppliers might be a little bit more followers than leaders in that. So what you're seeing is some of the material handling side might be maybe forced on them. If you want to operate, you have to operate in a clean environment. So that's interesting.
But a lot of that doesn't necessarily have to be real expensive. A good example on the material handling, rather than have to have expensive automated conveyors, you can use gravity roller conveyors to move stuff from one workstation to the next. And, the nice thing about that is it's a cheap way to get in, and it provides free movement. Yeah, sorry, I'm just reading the questions. But it provides a relatively free way to get in and also eliminates some of the labor that you would otherwise be spending to move that material. So I think in a lot of cases, it can be surprising how much little bits of automation you can do for not a lot of money.
Right.
And with common sense, right, Newell?
And with common sense. No, absolutely.
So, Rob, and this may not be a question that's asked too much about working from home and manufacturing. So following up on Newell's point about automation, and currently we have been operating with fewer people in most American businesses, including manufacturing to a lesser extent. Do you see that to be pushed more even in manufacturing?
Yeah, absolutely. So not from the, the technician level, but from the only necessary employees are having to be on site right now. I mean, even the FDA cut down on site quality audits over the past couple months here. So if you weren't essential to be on site, you're essentially working from home. And even the larger companies like Eli Lilly, for example, said that all non-essential personnel will be working off-site until 2021. They pushed it back that far now. Some of the other companies are saying that it's going to be the fall. That said, I think the other thing that's happening is that companies are figuring out that they can be productive and employees can work from home. And yes, there are things that are lost without the human interaction, but they're still able to be productive. So I don't know when everybody's going to be going back on site. I don't know if they ever will, but there are skill sets in manufacturing that don't have to be there every day of the week. So you may not see that return in some companies.
All right. But do you have any employees working from home on your side?
We can't have guys bring home machines, so that's been the biggest issue.
Of course.
Obviously, I think at the height we probably had 8 or 9 of us that was out. I went home. I thought I was drawing the long straw. I got the short one. I had to redo my office after all the claw marks trying to get out. But it's a true challenge from a manufacturing when everybody's used to being there, and that's all I've known for a long, long time. So it was a true change. I continually don't like it. I started back to work today. I'll be back in Thursday. I'm going to go 4 days next week and then from that point forward, I probably will go back to full time. I was out close to 4 weeks, and going in maybe once in a while. It's not my cup of tea. It's been difficult. Of course, they think I was on vacation, so that's a whole nother story. But the people that were out, I don't. We have learned that we can do it. We didn't skip a beat. We had materials people out. We had our QA manager that was out. We had both of our salespeople, which they can be out anyway, but they were out, which is, it's different because we have people come through our facility a lot, so our salespeople are in. So yeah, it's a dynamic change. Again, I thought it all to be very positive because we didn't skip anything. We didn't skip a beat. Things didn't get missed. Sometimes you can focus a little bit better being at home when you have quiet, but the solitude drives me up a wall.
Right.
True blood, right? I'm with you, Bud.
If I may, just I've seen several businesses with a similar experience to what Bud has described. To me, one of the upsides out of all this is lots of businesses have been forced to figure out how much stuff can we do remotely. And from my personal perspective, it supports a bandwagon I've been on for a number of years, which is we need to be better at collaborating on things. And we have not, in many small to mid-sized businesses, done a real good job at learning how to use collaborative tools like, I don't know, Microsoft Teams or Office or chat rooms or video conferencing, et cetera. But now many businesses have been forced into doing that for as many functions as we could. And I think coming out of this, we're going to find a lot more people are comfortable with virtual meetings, with project collaboration, with ways of using technology to share information with each other. So I think that's a great thing.
So on that same topic, is there more a trend towards outsourcing critical functions? And I'll actually go to Bill on this one. Bill, sales teams, obviously to go off on what Bud mentioned of, sales team not being there, do salespeople need to be employees? And is there a different model that this is leading to?
Yeah, we're seeing a rush to market and website design and make sure you have more of that information. We especially see that on the marketing side where marketing employees and manufacturing companies are really almost going completely outsourced because you don't need to be on site to do that. And oftentimes there's not quite enough work to be there full time. So we see that outsourced, and we are seeing more and more of the sales functionality, leadership, and some of the sales people even being outsourced. So yeah, it was a trend that was starting. And I think you're going to see COVID has really pushed that along. But you're probably going to see people accelerate on both sides, marketing and sales.
Right. And maybe this would also be a question for Rob. Rob, are you seeing outsource versus insource now of some of these functions?
For a lot of it, for me, it's too soon to tell. But as we were mentioning earlier, the contingent staff versus the staffing, I'll be interested to see those numbers when they come in. For us, we're all contingent and executive retained search, so we've seen no slowdown at all in terms of hiring and the job market. So on that note, it's very, very positive. But I'm not sure in terms of, their internal processes and exactly what they're doing there.
It's such an interesting discussion we're having here. I mean, you watch the news and you get a completely different picture about this.
We can get on our channel. We've got a question about the resulting impact on teamwork, culture, and the levels of mutual trust. How do you think that it's affecting it? Is that a Rob or a Bill?
Sure.
Use of technology and separating people and things like that. It's a different mix.
Yeah, and I think that for me personally, our company, we were always kind of afraid that we wouldn't have the culture that we wanted to have if you weren't here in person, right? And would we be able to be productive and be able to train people the right way. And we've had to pivot in a lot of ways with the things that we've done. I think, look, at the end of the day, we have to get back together as a culture, whether that's society or your company. And as soon as we can do that, we will. But the question is going to be, are you going to be on site 5 days a week? Maybe not. Are you going to be on site 2 days a week or 3 days a week to get that culture? Are there going to be staggered shifts? Who knows? But companies are definitely going to have to adapt to that. And for us, we do team builders and things like that. We'll get back to that as soon as we can, in the safest way that we possibly can. So, companies are going to innovate, and if you don't innovate, this is the time we're going to be not in a good place at the end of it.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. Let's see if any others want to answer that. Is how you build a culture of team in an environment where everyone's kind of spread out. Bill, you want to take a shot at it from your side?
Yeah, we had lots of customers. We have an HR side of our business as well, and we had always talked about culture and building that, and our clients would want to know, we think we want to do some virtual, but we don't. And there was a lot of fear and trepidation on whether or not you could hold on to culture, as Rob mentioned. And what they're finding is you can have a great culture, and you have to use the technology in a little bit different way. But we've all been on virtual happy hours or fun events or meetings. And while it's not perfect, it does still allow for a bit of camaraderie and culture to come together. And I think that fear factor was holding people and companies back. And I think you're going to see that integrated going forward. We're seeing that across the board on the HR side of our business, and people wanting to know more about how to use the technologies that are available to them.
All right.
Yeah, I'll jump in as well. I've got one client in particular who really was very leery of using a lot of technology in their business and was forced into it, and they've done very well with it. People have learned how to work with each other, even, one in their pajamas sitting at the kitchen counter and somebody else in, boxer shorts out on the deck or whatever. And people have figured out how to do that. The caveat is, of course, we're talking about small to mid-sized manufacturers. That leaves out all the folks on the shop floor. You're involved in physically touching the goods, whether you're in production or, warehousing or shipping. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to move any of that into a remote situation. That said, some of those folks in some companies have still been pushed into learning how to work virtually with someone who is sitting in there at their kitchen counter in pajamas. So even though you're in the facility, you've still had to work with folks that aren't necessarily there. So I think a lot of that has increased the capability of folks to work together with technology across the organization.
There has to be best practices shared in collaboration, right? Well, I've seen that if people are willing and adaptable, you're adaptable, resilient people, trust the other side. I've gone down some avenues, totally new, and have come out with success. So there's a lot to be said for your adaptability.
Absolutely.
We have a question that they would like everyone, if possible, to answer. They would like to ask, what change the most? What do you think the most will change regarding career growth, change in sales, on sites? They would love to hear what each of you think. What is the biggest change?
Good question. Bill, you want to start?
Yeah, from a sales side, the way clients interact, already most of your clients interacted with you via your website and whatever materials you had. And if you didn't have much there, you didn't have much to go on. But that's going to increase, and sales is really going to require you to have a better digital platform and an approach to your clients. I don't see us going back to full face-to-face and everything getting done that way. Even in a industry like manufacturing, that's been historically a face-to-face business. It'll still shift back a little bit, but if you're not there and you're not providing your clients with the material they need online, or they need to interact with you, you should look at fixing that quickly.
Hey, Bud, what are your thoughts?
I I don't know that. I'm just debating on how long the change is going to be for and how much it's going to last. I'm hoping that we're finding a rhythm. And I think if we in general find a rhythm, that means if the customers, the suppliers on all levels, I think that the rhythm will start dictating how the business is going to operate. I have a lot of faith in the new manufacturing. I think that there's going to be some obstacles. I don't think they're going to be major like I originally thought. If you'd asked me 5 weeks ago, I said there'd be major obstacles. Seeing how we've been able to react, the supply chain react, CEOs and all different levels of people have been easier to contact. I think they're more engaged. It may be because their business is down, and if our business is lifting their business, maybe that's drawn some attention. But I still think that I think if we are the negative Nancy's, that it can easily go that way, and it can be domino effect. But I think if we stay with some positivity and we address everybody in that way and stop, bemoaning what we already know. I mean, 5 or 6, 8 weeks of this. There's been enough negativity surrounding us that I think everybody needs to take these little positives and keep on churning it. And overemphasizing the rhythm. I think that if the rhythm remains positive, that I think it can be good for the economy. It can be good for us getting our feet back up together again.
Absolutely. Newell?
Yeah, I see two things that are very closely related that I hope are long-term changes. Only time will tell. One is a greater appreciation for operations being flexible. I think folks are recognizing now that having an operation that's got concrete cast around it is potentially a really bad business decision. So hopefully folks are going to be a little bit more attuned to trying to make things flexible. Closely related to that and sort of a driving motivation, nobody ever wants to do disaster planning. We have someone in Beacon who focuses on that, and he said all of a sudden people listen to him, and they wouldn't before. And, I think more folks for at least an extended period of time here are going to be aware that things can go south in a big way and in a surprising way. And so that goes back to the flexibility thing. Hopefully those two go hand in hand, and hopefully they're long-term changes.
All right.
So Newell, have you seen double sourcing with your clients? Have you seen people putting in strategic plans allowing for that double sourcing?
I personally, in terms of clients that I work with, no, I don't think they haven't gotten to that point yet. I think people wish they did have, multiple sources and more U.S. sources. But in terms of devoting tons of energy to restructuring the supply chain, I haven't seen folks that I work with yet head down that path. I think it's in the back of their mind, though, for as soon as we can kind of a thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of our local manufacturing also have long qualification cycles. If you're in aerospace, med device, all these have, to take a year to 2 years to get another source. So right now they're working with who they have, but perhaps on a longer term that could be true. Just a point, Rob did not answer the question. We'd like to hear what he has to say in terms of what he thinks. What's the one thing that'll change, Rob, that you see fast forward a year or 2 years from now?
Yeah, well, I think that the biggest change that we're going to see or that happened is there's been an eye-opening or an awakening to two things. One, that we can work remote in certain areas and we can be as efficient as we were before in certain areas. But the other thing is, I think that us as a country relying on the globe as much as we used to is going to change, I think, in a big way. And for us, it could be a very positive thing. It may cost a little bit more money in the short term, but I think we're going to see that's going to happen.
All right, great. Any other questions, Zola? Go ahead.
We do have a question on when people are doing their planning, how long are you looking out and planning for the disruption, which is where you started this conversation. You see your customers thinking, oh, by the end of the summer, is it 30, 60, 90 days, end of the year? You hear some universities are going back, some are shutting down. What are we seeing in your manufacturing sites?
Al, let me step in there. My thought is more along the lines of how long do you see the impact of COVID?
Mm-hmm.
It could be a couple of years. Some people think it's going to be 6 months, 3 months. What's your time horizon? What are you thinking about?
And just as a point of reference, we did that was a poll question, and the poll said that most people think, half of us almost think it's less than 12 months, and also definitely less than 2 years. So let's ask the panel, anyone have any other views on that?
So when your business gets back is not the same as to how long this is going to go. They're not the same question, in my opinion.
It's exactly, Rob. It's the total impact.
So who wants to take it?
Hopefully some of the things we just got done talking about are going to be permanent. Hopefully there's some permanent changes as a result of this. I'm hoping folks permanently put more emphasis on flexibility and disaster planning, but that remains to be seen. In terms of how long are people afraid of COVID-19 and exposure, I think that's going to continue until everybody feels like they have a treatment that'll make sure I don't die, and or I can get a vaccine to make sure I don't get sick in the first place. And I think that's a medical expert question.
Right, exactly. Okay. Any other questions, Eleanor?
And Newell, if you're a business, you got to be planning. You got to be thinking about what you think it may be or what it's going to be, and plan accordingly. And I just don't see how you can say it's out of our control. That's part of the forecasting and goal setting. It's all part of it.
Your leaders have to take that into their planning. I agree with you, Rob.
I don't disagree. The businesses I work with have largely been focused on keeping people from dying and being able to just make shipments. Long-term planning for the folks that I work with is, do we need everybody to come in tomorrow? Unfortunately, I think a lot of folks still have a pretty short-term outlook right now.
Absolutely. Eleanor, any others? Questions?
Most of the topics, I think it's a good.
Oh, perfect. All right, let's. This has been an excellent topic, and I really appreciate all the panelists pitching in. It was a very good discussion, a lot of back and forth. Just so everyone knows, this has been recorded. I think there were like maybe 20 points that were unique points that came out of this, that maybe re-listening to this call will give us all those. But instead of going over all 20, what I'd like to do is to give the panel one by one to give us their 30-second or less version of what did you take out of this? And maybe I'll start with you, Newell.
Take out of it, or maybe a key point for me. The key point for everybody is remain flexible, engage with employees and folks outside your business, meet regularly, and make tons of small changes as you find things that need to change. Thank you. Bud, your side?
I agree. I mean, I think flexibility is a big thing. I think we need to learn how to be more flexible on our floor, how to change quickly. You get into rote, and then the business starts to get a little sour. So I think that's an excellent point that Newell brought up, and I would hang on that. I flexibility, because that's, if you can't be flexible in your business, then you're going to find yourself in the back end. So it's not really where I want to be at this point. Bill?
Yeah, that's well said. It's adaptability, flexibility, and being able to change and move as the business proceeds. It's hard to tell what tomorrow will bring, but be ready for it. And I think both Newell and Rob and Bud brought up some great points about that very thing, being flexible and adaptable to the changes that are coming.
And Rob, what's your big takeaway?
Yeah, I think that for the most part, everything I heard on the call was pretty positive in terms of what companies are doing. So the new era of work to me is, the most exciting thing, right? Safety, making sure that you're doing the right thing. And, it's going to be the new normal, may be a positive thing for companies in the future here. So that's my take. Is that I agree with all the flexibility and working in new ways, and either you're going to adapt and innovate, or you're going to be in trouble as a company.
Great. Thank you. So on that note, I'll turn it over to Ed. I want to thank each of the panelists for delivering exactly what we talked about previously and keeping this an upbeat conversation. So Ed, you're on.
Thanks, AJ, and I'd like to thank each of the panelists as well. I think this is a great session. One of the takeaways that I'm struck with is you think about kind of the innovation, responsiveness, and flexibility as some of the key takeaways. One of the things that really stuck me is the level of optimism amongst our panelists in terms of this makes us stronger and will be better as we come out of the back end of it. So,
Beacon is the premier executive networking organization serving the Mid-Atlantic region. To learn more, go to beaconforlife.org.